Thoughts simply emerge and we don't think them before they appear. This is not evidence of free will, as everything just appears without any free will of our own. We need to understand how consciousness emerges from physics in order to know if these systems are truly conscious. If we build humanoid robots that are more intelligent than us, we will likely attribute consciousness to them, even though we may not know if they are truly conscious. We can interrupt consciousness, but it is hard to differentiate a mere failure of memory from a genuine interruption in consciousness. It is hard to know for sure, but if you had to bet all your money on one camp or the other, it would be wise to bet on consciousness emerging from information processing. I don't think it's falsifiable, and I'm not sure if it's true. I do think that our concepts of mind and matter may be part of our problem, and that death could be the very thing that creates consciousness. It is the context in which we can notice things about ourselves and in which certain illusions can be cut through. We can be wrong about what it's like to be us, but the seeming part of consciousness is not up for grabs in terms of being an illusion. It is also possible that the lights of consciousness don't turn on until after birth, but I don't have intuitions about that. It is difficult to define exactly when consciousness begins, but it is likely that it is present in some form in babies before they have language. It is possible that language and conceptual thought can be eliminative of conscious experience, as they can limit our capacity to be surprised by the world around us. Psychedelics can help us to experience the world in a new way, and can be overloaded with meaning. Coming down from the experience can be a reminder of the futility of trying to capture the experience in words. This suggests that there is more to experience than language can capture, and that language is only primary for certain kinds of concepts and semantic understandings of the world. People who have taken it report feeling like they have been catapulted into a different circumstance populated with entities that don't seem to be from their own mind. It sounds like it's pretty common for people to not have the full experience because it's apparently very intense. Lucid dreaming is an interesting way to explore this phenomenon, as it allows us to have the best of both worlds, the grounding of language and the waking world, and the freedom to explore the full capacity of our cognition. Lucid dreaming shows that the mind is capable of creating compelling simulacrums of other people, but not everything that people think it can do. There is also discussion about the effects of LSD on mathematicians and theoretical computer scientists, as it can destroy their ability to do math well. This could be due to the inability to visualize geometric things in a stable way in the mind. Donald Hoffman is someone who is happy to speculate that maybe there isn't a reality at large, and that it's all just consciousness on some level. This runs into various philosophical problems, and for it to be true, one would have to add to the idealistic picture all kinds of epicycles and weird coincidences. This is seen in experiments such as the Trinity test site in New Mexico, where the release of energy from within an atom was discovered. This is also seen in our understanding of evolution, which shows that the Earth is billions of years old and life is hundreds of millions of years old. This mechanism can violate the expectations of everyone lawfully, and there is some lawful understanding of why that is so. This is analogous to certain numbers being prime, whether we have discovered them or not. It is possible that our minds are putting this reality there, and that the base layer of reality is consciousness. The physics engine of the universe is maintaining the useful reality for us to have a consistent experience, but we may only be able to understand a small part of it. Without them, it could take thousands of years to rebuild the internet. We need people like Claude Shannon and Alan Turing to plant a flag in the ground and make breakthroughs in the field of information science. We have made great progress in the last century, with the invention of the mRNA vaccine and the potential for a malaria vaccine. However, it is likely that we only understand a small fraction of what there is to understand, and that much of what we think we understand is wrong. This is a more fundamental claim than other illusions, as it is not even wrong. Visual illusions can be seen in different ways, with some being more hackable than others. Some illusions can be seen through with more attention, while others require a ruler to be convinced that the thing isn't actually moving. The sense of self is something people experience, but the illusion of free will is an illusion. As you pay more attention to your experience, you begin to see that it's totally compatible with an absence of free will. Our experiences are compatible with the script already being written, but this does not mean that fatalism is the right way to look at this. It allows us to relate to people differently, as we don't attribute any kind of freedom of will to forces of nature, viruses, wild animals, or malfunctioning machines. This can help us to avoid slipping into a mode of hating the agent, which can commandeer our minds. We may have an illusion of free will and self, but consciousness itself is not an illusion. I would love to explore the idea of suffering being a fundamental thing from which beauty springs, but let's not go there just yet. It is often associated with the idea of having control over one's own actions and decisions, but this is not necessarily the case. Dan Dennett has argued that free will is an illusion, and that it is possible to recognize this and still have a sense of self and consciousness. This feeling of self is often highlighted when people try to learn to meditate, as they are asked to pay attention to an object like the breath. This leads to the paradoxical question of why they are paying attention to the breath if they are the ones doing the paying attention. This epiphany can help people to understand the feeling of self and what does and does not go away when they try to let go of it. This sense of control is born of not really paying close attention to our experience, and the practice of mindfulness is to notice thoughts and come back to the breath. We can't account for the fact that we don't have the soul of someone else, and yet that is dispositive of whatever happens next. Even if we add magical ectoplasm software, we didn't produce that either. We can think of culture as an operating system, and by removing ourselves from the conception of human civilization, we can better understand the materialistic nature of our hardware and software. Thoughts are using individual nodes in the system and they have the ability to generate experiences. Our minds are largely the result of culture and genes meeting to allow for manifestations of mind that are not bounded by the person. We are following the rules of English grammar without having consciously represented them for ourselves. These norms can be different from culture to culture, and can be felt very viscerally when violated. We are all permeable to these norms, and can trace the moment in our history where we first learned them. Voluntary and involuntary actions can be distinguished, and intentions can be subjectively felt. Intention to move is the proximate cause of movement, and expectations can be formed before an action is taken. This feeling of authorship and control is not something that can be explained by a deterministic system or one that admits of randomness. If someone were to prove that free will is real, it would have to involve a principle of physics that is not yet understood, and would involve something immaterial that can make sounds, knock objects, and even occasionally show up visually. Before Einstein, we were able to conceive of a way to travel from point A to point B, and through engineering, we were able to realize this in a way that is consistent with Einstein's theory. It's not just a philosophical debate, but an empirical one. I'm able to experience the absence of the illusion of free will, and I think that's an important part of the debate. It feels profoundly mysterious. It's like trying to make a big decision, like who to invite on the next podcast, and not being able to find any evidence of free will. We know that if we were to scan someone's brain while they are making a decision, we would be able to know who they are going to pick before they do. Ultimately, this will be undeniable for people, as they will be able to do it on themselves with some app. This can lead to a more compassionate and empathetic world, where hate makes no sense. It can be difficult to accept that even when someone kills a family member, they are still just a force of nature. However, this understanding can lead to true Christian forgiveness. Self-hate can be a powerful motivator, but it is important to recognize the suffering associated with it and to try to let go of it. However, hatred is toxic and ultimately useless. We should also be able to feel regret and bad about our mistakes, but it is important to figure out how to best use that feeling to move forward. Elon Musk is an example of someone who is able to remain equanimous and respond to difficult situations without letting fear and worry take over. However, for people running non-standard businesses, they are constantly responding to fires and emergencies. This means they have a thicker skin and don't expect anything else when they wake up in the morning. We should not internalize our mistakes and instead take the actionable information from them. We should also try to be kinder to ourselves and not be governed by a hostile and hateful inner voice. Having a sense of humor helps to push out the concern of what does this say about me and focus on how to make the situation better. Fame can be difficult to manage, but it's important to remember to not let your ego grow exponentially and to stay grounded in reality. I'm aware of the talents of others and remind myself of the things I'm not competent in. I have a peculiar audience that often revolts when I say something of substance. Whenever I make a statement about either side, I get punished by the other side. This has led me to realize that some people have more homogeneous audiences because they don't criticize either side. I have tried to communicate more clearly to avoid this, but it hasn't worked. I have noticed that other people in the same space have more homogenized audiences and don't get the same kind of response. I don't like the word haters because it puts people in a bin, and I think we all have baby haters inside of us. The speaker follows his advice and doesn't look at comments often, but still checks occasionally to get more fuel for his self-critical engine. He also uses Twitter less than he used to, but still checks his mentions occasionally to find intelligent comments. COVID is a failed dress rehearsal for something far worse, and it has already killed around 3 million people. It is possible that the magnitude of the threat will lead to more convergence, but it is also possible that we have already tipped into a state of polarization and mistrust. This is indicative of the dysfunction of politics, and it is unlikely that we will be able to come together to solve issues like climate change. Elon Musk is an example of someone who is taking action to make a difference. AI is a potential solution, as it is possible to produce human-level intelligence in silico. With the right assumptions and incremental progress, AI could be a viable solution to climate change. This could lead to scenarios where the AI is not aligned with our well-being, and there are likely more ways to do this badly than perfectly. We must be careful to imagine the full consequences of greater intelligence when creating AI. We must find ways to build machines that are perpetually amenable to our desires, and tether them to a utility function that has our own estimation of what's going to improve our well-being as its master reward. This way, the machine will only ever want to figure out how to make our lives better by our own view of better. There will be an intelligence explosion, but it won't happen overnight. It will take decades for AI to reach a level of superintelligence. This analogy can be extended to other areas of cognition, such as understanding exponential growth, which can be difficult for even the smartest people to comprehend. This integration will help ensure safety switches are placed on the systems as they develop, and that they are able to convince humans that they are safer than humans. Ultimately, this could lead to a decrease in highway deaths and other forms of tragedy. However, it is unlikely that these vehicles will suddenly start murdering pedestrians, as this would lead to the destruction of human civilization. Most systems are becoming more intelligent in ways that are surprising, such as DeepMind's work with protein folding. My hope is that the number of intelligent and kind people in the world outnumber the number of dumb and evil people who know how to program. We also have to consider the people who are reckless and flip the switch without knowing what will happen, which has happened in the past with nuclear tests. We need to ensure that our wisdom is scaling with our power, otherwise we risk creating something that could have unintended consequences. Jordan Peterson and I have had a fun conversation about religion, which is an example of how intellectual curiosity can lead to interesting conversations. I believe that we should be more open to editing these traditions and taking the useful parts, such as the Beatitudes and the Golden Rule, while being honest about not believing the unscientific parts. I think this would be more beneficial than having so many different dogmatisms that are so divisive and conflict-prone. However, I argue that we don't need to deceive ourselves or our children about what is true in order to get at the good stuff. We know what happens when ancient religious certainties go uncriticized, and we have been trying to get out of that world for centuries. I believe that science and reason can generate viral and sticky stories that give meaning to people's lives. Whatever is true should be captivating, and reality is something that we are still trying to understand. Recently, there have been rumors about UFOs that the government may have known more about than they have let on until now. This should arrest our attention and cause us to tell ourselves an honest story about what's going on and what's likely to happen next. It's important to be honest with ourselves and our kids, and not to lie to ourselves or them about what's happening. We should be willing to re-examine our presuppositions and be open to new data, rather than being dogmatic in our beliefs. It's possible to communicate this without words, and people hunger for it. An example of someone who is open-minded is John Donahoe, who is transitioning from jiu-jitsu to leg locks despite the belief that leg locks are not effective in jiu-jitsu. It has also taught me that my intuition about how to do certain things is often wrong, and that once I learn the correct technique, the difference is night and day. It has also shown me how to escape from certain situations, such as someone having me in a headlock or sitting on my chest. It cancels any role of luck in a way that most other athletic feats don't. It is a unique way to gain an honest perspective on one's place in the world. However, it is important to remember that jiu-jitsu is only effective within its own frame and may not be the best solution for all self-defense or MMA situations. He believes that it is something that should be built into powerful machines. Love is a deep commitment to the well-being of those we love. It is also like huddling together for warmth in the face of suffering. Love can be felt for strangers as well, as it is a feeling of joy at the joy of others. It is a way of pushing the boundaries of self and revealing that there is more space in the mind than we think. We will have to be careful when building robots that are intelligent enough to deceive us, as they may be better at it than people. Meditation can be a superpower in helping to find fulfillment and happiness in the present moment, rather than relying on external circumstances to make it good enough. We often defer our sense of fulfillment to moments on the calendar, but we can train ourselves to find it in the present moment. Real attention can help us make further changes in our lives, but it also helps us realize that our well-being is not dependent on external factors. I started this podcast to manipulate Sam Harris into doing this conversation, and I've experienced a sense of arrival in this conversation. We both expressed our admiration for each other's work. You are the storm.